One of the interesting things about philosophy is that they can be applied to not only today but today's headlines. So this is going to be an interesting exercise. What would Nezahualcoyotl, ancient philosopher from Mexico, from the Anahuac, he used to be a king of Texcoco, one of the greatest kings that the indigenous people ever had. He was a philosopher as well as a warrior. He was an architect. He was many things, a diplomat, what have you. He was a person that, even though he was born as a prince, because his dad was killed, the king of Texcoco, Xochitl, got killed by Emperor Tezosomoc, he became a no one, he became homeless, and from that he rose as an independent person. So this is the person I'm gonna talk to you about. He isn't someone that was born with all the luxuries. Yes, he was born with all the luxuries, but then he lost everything and had to create this code for him and for himself and for his society. So what would Nezahualcoyotl think about TikTok today? Philosopher Nezahualcoyotl. Well, first of all, his philosophies were what we would call today conservative. And you know, a lot of people cannot have both in the same sentence. Natives, indigenous, with conservative. Why? I don't know. And that's one of the problems that I see from Western civilization. Western civilization wants everything centered about them. And whatever their ideas, even their misconceptions have of other people like natives and indigenous, it has to be true, and it's not. And this doesn't just apply to the left or to the right, it's both of them in the Eurocentric sense. Now, I know this sounds dense, but once I get that out of the way, we see that Nezahualcoyotl was very conservative in his ideas, and he explained it in several occasions through poems and even through a lot of predictions he made for the future. Even though he wasn't a prophet as such, he was a person that foresaw the future in the sense of doing an analysis of what's good and bad for society. So what would Nezahualcoyotl, King Nezahualcoyotl, philosopher Nezahualcoyotl would think about TikTok? There is an idea that Nezahualcoyotl once said, and one of the, as I said, he was a very conservative person. His laws were conveyed as such, but the key point is when he compares, Nezahualcoyotl compares youth with small plants. Remember, this is a society that it's based on nature, and everything that the forces of nature has and have to rely on. This society, even though it's agricultural, it's an advance at some points, it does rely a lot on nature, and that's the basis of native ideology. So his idea was that youth was viewed, in his point of view, as a philosopher, as a small plant. So it's not a full-grown tree, an adult, or a grown man, a grown woman. It's not a seed, because seeds are before they are born. He compared youth to small plants. Now, this is important because one of the concepts he conveys is that youth, small plants, shouldn't be decimated before they are grown. And when he talks about, because he actually talks about a very specific plant, maguey. Now, maguey, if you don't know, maguey, it's a very Mexican plant. You can see the spines, you can see it's very Mexican. There's a lot of legends, a lot of stories, a lot of mythology going around the maguey since ancient times in Mexico. And it's because the maguey is a really Mexican plant. Now, and a lot of products that not only were used, but they're still used in Mexico, come from maguey. A lot of them. So Nezahualcoyotl compares youth, young people, with a maguey. You see this plant and you cut it open to have its products, because it's not only the fiber, it's also the liquid that comes from maguey. So it's like having a plant or that produces food and sustenance for you. But he talks about using that plant beforehand, before it's mature, before it's usable for production, for society. And when he compares maguey plant with youth, he compares it, yes, in the sense that you have to let the plant grow and you cannot exploit it beforehand. Now, the connotation of this, from Nezahualcoyotl's point of view, he is talking about how hypersexualization, it's wrong in society, number one. Number two, it's wrong for youth, for the young people. It affects them because, as the maguey plant, if you cut it beforehand, you're just making it not worthy. It's not usable enough. You're just taking advantage of something that hasn't even grown yet and got its full potential. And I'm talking about the plant, but I'm also talking about young people. And that's how Nezahualcoyotl saw this. This is his philosophy. We need to understand that he even got his ideas for his laws from all of this. This is not someone that just woke up and said, I have this idea. Like I said in a previous video, this king, this philosopher, got his ideas from all his life that he suffered and the way he overcome to become a better person, a successful person. That's where he got all his ideas. And he put those ideas to work in his own kingdom, and it became one of the greatest kingdoms in the Anahuac, which you know as Mesoamerica. And I'm talking that you know it as Mesoamerica because that's the way academia says it's its name, but we call it that way. Academia calls Mesoamerica Mesoamerica. And I said that, and I told you it's the way you know it because academia gave that name, Mesoamerica. It's not the real name. The real name is Anahuac, if you want to see it from our own perspective of our old world. After all, we are descendants, at least a lot of us are descendants from these ancient and great people, the indigenous people of Mexico. And like myself, I'm even a descendant of Nezahualcoyotl himself. And as such, I want to convey this idea from their point of view, from our point of view. So he saw youth and he saw people as plants, and he saw that you cannot take advantage of people before they have reached their own potential. Now, to make an analysis of TikTok, this app, even though it can be used for anything, and the technological possibilities of it, it's enormous, it's magnificent, but people don't use it like that. When you think of TikTok, you don't see it as a way to communicate with people. You see it for the wrong things it has. One of the wrong things it has is that they have a lot of small, young people dancing around. It sounds stupid, but the way it's hypersexualized, that's the problem. And there's no way of controlling that. Now, we cannot control people, but apps, we're supposed to control apps. Another issue is that young people cannot see the problems. Forget the legal ones. I mean, we can touch base on the legal issues that has having small, younger than 18 people dancing, especially girls dancing. Forget about that. We can just focus on the mental situation, psychological issue. What will this generation be when they become grown? You know, like Nezahualcoyotl said, they are plants, we are plants, all of us are plants. Some of us became grown trees, but what will they become if mentally, you know, they're being exploited without even knowing, and they don't even know it. And that's why Nezahualcoyotl compared young people to young plants, because young plants haven't even reached the potential of creating natural defenses like trees. Trees have created and developed a lot of natural defenses against possible pests or even people, because they grow tall, they grow mighty, but as well they have certain protections that small plants don't. Any person can walk through small plants. Small plants are naive in a sense that they are simple, they are still developing, they are tender, and especially that they are tender. We need to realize that small plants, young people are tender, and we are taking advantage of it. We as an adult people, when we say we, because we need to tell of the dangers that probably Nezahualcoyotl couldn't, because he never knew anything about TikTok. But he realized that there will be a time where the plant will be cut and will be used and will be taken advantage of. And it's called one of the prophecies of Nezahualcoyotl, one of his predictions. Now, I don't know if it's an actual prophecy or an actual prediction, but he said that, and he was worried that in the future small plants will be cut. He saw that this could be an issue for society, and that this would bring upon problems to society that we cannot even imagine right now. And a lot of things that we cannot see right now because they haven't come to pass. When we see a doctor, we ask the doctor what's wrong with us, and the doctor tells us, and we believe it, and we take the medication that the doctor tells us and prescribes us. But why aren't we listening to philosophers, to the great thinkers, to the great people that came before us and foresaw the dangers that could bring upon society and upon people? You know, to have an app like TikTok, it's a place where people can prey upon the young. And the young doesn't know, again, as Nezahualcoyotl would say, because they are small plants, like small plants, tender. They haven't developed 100% to be strong enough against the winds of any issue that could come. If there's a hurricane right now, a lot of these trees will survive. And let me tell you that strong trees survive. Trees that have great, mighty roots. Trees that are strong, thick, hardened by life. Small trees on the other hand, you'll see that not always they survive. And even though they are in larger numbers, mathematically, you know that a lot of them will not make it to become great trees, to become mighty, to become strong and against any adversity that comes in life. And yes, trees have issues as well, winds and rain and predators like insects. So again, in a society which protects nature, which was that of Nezahualcoyotl, he saw people comparing people with nature was the logical way to explain people themselves of a lot of dangers that we adults have become grown and hardened by life, because we have suffered many issues, we have enjoyed a lot of them as well, but young people haven't. And one of the issues that young people bring upon is that they want to live through those too. The problem is, yes, you can do that, but not while people are taking advantage of you. And Nezahualcoyotl saw that very well. Nezahualcoyotl would see that TikTok, it's an app where young people are being taken advantage of, their tenderness, of their naivete, of their way of seeing the world, just as small plants would do. You can take advantage of small plants. If I want to, I can take one and take it home with me. But I cannot do that with that big mighty tree. I cannot do that with these other trees, because they're big, they're powerful, they know their place in the world. I'm not talking about censorship when a company or an app takes advantage of someone. On the other hand, you see liberals talking about other issues that must be censored. And even though they may be right in some things and in others they are not right, we still see that as correct censorship. But we don't see that with TikTok, because it affects a lot of them. And if something affects you, you need to think for yourself and not for your lower instincts, which also Nezahualcoyotl talks about, that we should aim for higher purposes in life, because life is short. According to Nezahualcoyotl, it's such a short life that we should do the best of it by living good things. And Nezahualcoyotl talked about this a lot. So why waste it in things that don't merit or give good things to the world? Because we're not gonna leave anything in the world, not even ourselves. We will decay, even our bodies will decay. And this is what Nezahualcoyotl said as well. And in this point, this is why Nezahualcoyotl would be against apps like TikTok or these trends of people dancing, I would say nude, but a lot of people will tell me they're not nude. But 20 years ago, and I was young 20 years ago, to see a 16-year-old dancing on TikTok with only her panties and a bra, for me 20 years ago, that would be nude. Now I'm bringing back a guy who lived almost more than 500 years ago. Nezahualcoyotl lived in the 15th century. So you would say, what would he know about apps? Well, Nezahualcoyotl wouldn't know squat. He wouldn't know crap about apps. You can rest assured about that. But he would surely know these sociological effects, these psychological effects that these will bring upon people, especially young people, and upon society. Because after all, Nezahualcoyotl was very worried about how society was nurtured. And it's not a light thing to take, because he was worried that society could crumble any minute. And the issue has to do with how people behave. You can say it's censorship, but it's not. There are things that people can or cannot do. And yes, if you want to, you can dance half naked if you want to on TikTok. But it's different if you're 14 years old. It's different if you're so young, like small plants, that you haven't reached your full potential, in the sense that Nezahualcoyotl once said that plants cannot be taken advantage of, cannot be cut, cannot be utilized in any way, because they haven't even become to be a big plant, small tree. No, they're just small. And young people have to realize that psychologically their minds are still developing. That's an interesting fact. You can check that out. And that's the reason why young people learn more. They can learn languages, they can learn a lot of things, and they do learn a lot of things because that's how their brain operates. They're still developing. Now, whether Nezahualcoyotl knew that, I don't know, because they had a lot of research in the medical fields in ancient times, in ancient Mexico, with indigenous practitioners. And we know that because they perform a lot of surgeries, and they perform a lot of dental interventions as well. So we don't know to what extent Nezahualcoyotl knew about the psychology, the actual psychology of people. But we know that he was worried about youngsters getting influenced by the bigger trees. You know, influence is a good thing and a bad thing. It's just like money. Who says money is bad? Who says apps are bad? Thing is how you use them, and thing is they're not the end game in this life. And Nezahualcoyotl talked about that. Coming here to this such short life, and this is a short life, Nezahualcoyotl said, why waste it in other things when you should be making friends and working upon leaving something of worth behind you? Thank you so much for listening, and if you have any comments, questions, don't forget to subscribe as well, and we'll see you next time.